This week on Crappy Days, you're going to hear me and Jake discuss our 30s. We're going to talk about how there aren't any good comedy movies being made in the last 10 years. And we're also going to discuss the most disgusting sports uniforms imaginable. So let's get Jake on the phone. All right, everybody. Welcome to Crappy Days, the podcast for people born in the wrong generation. As always, I am Justin. Your co-host Jake is on the other line there. Really quick, Jake, I don't think in the first two episodes I ever mentioned that I'm in Washington State and you're in Florida. I don't think that's ever been talked about. We don't need to discuss it any further. It's just that's why we do it over Zoom. We both got different perspectives living here and there, and it might be something worth knowing in the future. But anyway, one thing we wanted to talk about today, speaking of different perspectives and everything, we're both in our 30s now. I'm going on 32 next month. I think you're turning 31 this month, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah,
and
10 days.
Yeah, exactly. And the 13th, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Life's changing a lot. I feel like for both of us, your perspective changes a lot after 30 and going into, like, I'm practically almost in my mid 30s. I'm kind of always thinking a year ahead now. Like I've already been 32 in my mind for the last year because I'm just always thinking of the next year. So I don't know. I feel like your life has kind of followed a more traditional 20s to 30s transformation. So I kind of want to let you have the floor for a minute, and being a dad and being a married guy and everything, I kind of want to get your thoughts on that.
Okay, yeah. So I have a hard time looking at my 30s through a normal glass because I had my first kid at 29, just had my second kid 3 months ago, and so it's all I've known since I turned 30 is just being a dad. I know you briefly mentioned just how fast the time has gone. It seems like, in the blink of an eye, we were, just a couple of loser virgins in high school. And now, we're already 30 years old. Once you have kids, that timeline is absolutely accelerated tenfold. It feels like the last decade went quick, but the last 2 years since I became a parent is just, it's unbelievable. It's scary. I'm going to blink again. We're going to be 45, blink a second time. We're going to be 70, blink a third time. You, I, and everyone we know, love, and care about will all be worm food. So
I think about that all the time. I mean, if things go well for us, we're approaching the halfway mark already.
You're getting there, yeah. I mean, I think the average lifespan for a man in this country is like 76, 77.
I think it's more like 74, and women is more like 77. But I think that includes people who die in infancy and everything. So of a person who makes it to adulthood, I think the average age is probably closer to 80. But even if that's the case, we're approaching the halfway mark, pretty close.
Well, it's a good thing I identify as a woman, so hopefully I can squeeze a couple years out at the end there with that identification.
And a break on your car insurance too, hopefully.
That's exactly right. The other thing just related to 30s being a dad is, you completely just, I can't even recall what my life entailed in my 20s. I have no idea, like, what I used to do on my free time, what Melissa and I would do on a weekend. I couldn't even tell you. It's like the Men in Black little flash pen has just erased my memory because everything I did before was so meaningless.
Yeah.
So, you become a parent, and then the highlight of your week, my highlight actually just happened today. I got a new vacuum. It was absolutely fantastic, dude. Ordered it on Amazon. Amazon has that new tracking feature. And I was able to just sit there and track it. Oh, your vacuum's 10 stops away. You're the next stop. And I'm waiting at my door like a puppy. Vacuum comes. I tear that box open like a kid on, Christmas morning. Great stuff. Pleased to report that it works really well.
Kirby, Oryx, Shark, what did you go with?
I got a Hoover. Yeah.
Hoover. I can't believe I left that out. It's like the pinnacle.
Yeah, it's the pinnacle for dog hair, which we'll get to in a bit too. But that's really the observations that I have from, turning 30, or at least early observations. Have you noticed anything different? I mean, obviously, as you mentioned, we're kind of on different paths here.
Yeah.
What's your 30s been like? You're coming up on 32 pretty quick.
Well, as you mentioned, in my case, no kids, no wife. So everything I do continues to be meaningless. Um, but your perspective does change a little bit. I think your 30s, this is the way I would put it. If I had to encapsulate everything, the 30s is the decade that you give up on your dreams, or at least you should, or you should at least think about amending them a little bit. Like, I don't know, like I was pursuing stand up to a degree for a while, and I still don't want to completely throw it out. I'll probably do it from time to time and when I get the opportunity. But I was having such a hard time balancing, like a 40-hour work week and then driving into town, waiting in line for an hour to do 3 minutes of stand up, and then drive home and get home late. And then wake up and do it all over again. It was like, it takes up every moment of your day. It was a tough thing to do. And I'm at the age too, where like, I don't own a house, and I'm thinking, God, it's getting harder and harder to own a house. Hopefully the market gets easier. And I'm just thinking about, like, how do you do those things? Like I care a lot more about that than I used to. So I'm like, I don't really have time for this and that now. I got to think about these things. I got to think about saving money.
Mm-hmm.
All the stuff that's not fun and you don't want to do, but you just, at a certain point, you have to. So that's one big change is, your goals change, I guess, or you shelf some for a later time, or put them away, and you come up with new ones that are more boring, but you have to do them.
In kind of that same vein, real quick before we divert too far from that, yeah, you absolutely have to look into the future, and that's, that hits you like a ton of bricks, especially coming out of your 20s.
Yeah, big time.
But what, my idea, or looking ahead to the future, is again so related. Everything's related to my kids now, but I realize how much people and society in general just absolutely despise children. They see them as parasitic, life-sucking organisms. And at the same time, though, they're everybody. I've kind of turned into like a paranoid, kooky old man living in a shuttered old mansion down the street. The kids stay away from their front yard. I'm that paranoid in the sense that I feel like everybody is out to get my kids, to to groom them and to corrupt them. I can't even turn on Nickelodeon without a damn trans pride song sung by a drag queen on Blue's Clues.
Oh, yeah, I remember that one. Yep.
Yeah, and so like my whole worldview is just related to like, well, what is this going to be like when they're 10 years old? What is it going to be like, when they're 15 and they're teenagers and they're rebelling? So I could go down the rabbit hole forever. It's scary thoughts, man. I'm telling you.
Well, I remember when I was a kid, my parents were pretty strict about what I was allowed to watch. I couldn't watch things like Rugrats or Rocko's Modern Life.
Harry Potter was actually like controversial when we were kids.
I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah, there were a lot of parents that were, what is this wizardry and magic and witchcraft?
If you're, when you come from a religious home, I remember that being a thing for a while. I remember my grandma wanting me to watch a video about Harry Potter and how it's witchcraft, and I was like, Grandma, I don't care whether it is or not. I just think it's gay. I don't like Harry Potter. I never did. And I feel like these days there's so many people, there's nothing more pathetic than someone who's like 35 talking about what Hogwarts school they belong to.
Yeah, I know. I just found out recently, I don't even know how it came about or whatever, and I wish I didn't know this, but there are actual adults our age, millennials, grown millennials, that have like club Quidditch leagues in different cities, various cities. You could sign up and play Quidditch. I don't even know if I'm pronouncing that correctly. I hope I'm not. Absolutely ridiculous, pathetic losers.
I've seen that live in Seattle. I was in, where was I? It was like, I forget the neighborhood. I was Queen Anne or something. I don't know, but there was some, it was like a soccer field, and there were a bunch of, lanky virgins in their 30s playing Quidditch.
just running around on a broom. They can't fly, obviously.
With brooms, and there were people holding like big hula hoops or whatever. I think you're supposed to jump through those. I don't know. I couldn't tell you, but yeah, it's turning into a runaway train on Harry Potter. I wasn't planning on bringing him up at all. Let's get back on course here. The second way for me, I've noticed life changes in your 30s, even more in your maybe in your late 20s in my case, but you learn to drink like an adult at a certain point. Like for me now, like I can't, I'm not saying I'm immune to overdoing it once in a while, but usually it's, a drink, 2 drinks, and I'm off to bed. And like that's, you just kind of sip on it, enjoy the taste, wind down for the night. It wasn't like that in our early 20s or even when we were minors. There are some stories we could get into that we probably shouldn't. But I've been saying for a long time, drinking was the most fun when it was illegal.
Yeah, well, I mean, you're so immature. It's new. I really have not been like pretty drunk since my 21st. I've had a good buzz here and there since then, but since my 21st, I really haven't. And when I first turned 21, it was like exciting to go to clubs for a little bit. And so, I think for the first couple of years I went to clubs, and then I moved to San Diego when I was like 23, 24. And then went to a little club phase again for maybe that first 6 months or so living in San Diego, because they got a good club scene down there and everything. And this isn't exclusive to my 30s, but it definitely did happen within the last few years, and it's only gotten worse in my 30s. I hate the idea of going somewhere where you can't even hear anybody. You can't hear anything around you. Your ears are ringing. You're trying to order a $15 drink. My perfect idea of a bar is basically the Benton Franklin, County Library with a little bar, and everybody shut the hell up, and you're just reading a book to yourself, smoking a cigar, and drinking a glass of scotch. I think that's the ideal bar setting for your 30s.
I like that idea too. I think in the old days in England and stuff, a pub was basically just a place where there was no music. There was only men were allowed in a lot of them, for one thing. So it was kind of just a place for dudes to hang out and, just mellow out. Really, it wasn't like a go out and we've got a Return of the Mac playing or something, which not a bad song, by the way, but it was just a different atmosphere.
Yeah, I need a good silent place that I can, slip to in the middle of the night and leave some dirty diapers behind for Melissa to change.
Well, also, given that drinking when it's illegal is the most fun, that's probably why the 20s are known as the Roaring 20s, and it's portrayed as such a fun time. The production and sale of alcohol was illegal like the entire decade. And for some reason, it's the most fun decade ever. It's because everybody was going out finding these secret places where drinking was not allowed, and they were doing it anyway. Probably more drinking in history took place in the era where it was illegal, and hence it ended.
Yep. I think I probably shouldn't. I was 16 when I had my first beer at a party, and I think it was a Keystone Light. And I do remember I had one Keystone Light, and I actually started to feel it. Yeah. The first time my body had been exposed to alcohol, and it was glorious. So much fun. I laughed like a schoolgirl over it.
The first time I drank alcohol, besides like tasting it at age 11 and spitting it out, I was like 18. You were definitely there. It was at Max's house, and I think I had five beers, and I was on cloud 9. Life of the party / probably the annoying guy who's like just probably bothering you. I don't know. I've never.
Actually, I remember that very night, and you were on the drum set. You were on Max's drum set in the garage. The whole party's going on, and we just start hearing on a drum. You might have even been shirtless, and I'm not kidding.
What a jackass. Oh my God. I remember the drums. I don't know if I was shirtless. That might be apocryphal.
It might be, but the drums happened.
Okay, the drums definitely happened. I'll give you that. The third thing that's changed in my 30s, I care a lot less about my personal appearance to a degree.
Mm.
Like I don't want to gain weight or get out of shape so much, but like I'll wear sweatpants in public without batting an eye now, and I would have been embarrassed to do that even at age 28, to run to the store with sweatpants on. I didn't want to be seen like that. I would have put on some jeans, as arduous as that is. Now I could not care less. I also I'm at an age where I'm brave enough to come out as gray. I've known I was gray since I was 23. I would pluck them out, and at a certain point I was like, there's so many of these things. If I keep plucking them out, I'm not going to have any hair left. And I dyed it for a while. And since I turned 30, I've embraced it. My hair's extremely gray in the temples, and I'm never going to hide it from anyone again. I'm gray and I'm proud.
Good for you. I am balding and still somewhat in denial. I actually
You
bought
have been a big hat guy this series, haven't you?
I have to be, dude. I'm telling you, I got a George Costanza thing going on right around here in this
Oh,
this
yeah.
region of the head.
Classic
It,
horseshoe pattern.
it's bad. Yeah, I bought some bald cream a little while ago. I put it on sparingly here and there, and then I just kind of realized, like, yeah, this is kind of a hassle to remember to do this as part of my morning routine. And so I'm slowly working my way towards, that one of the stages of grief and reach an acceptance. Uh, and
Wait, hold
by the time
on.
I turn 31, 32, I probably will accept it. My wife can
Yeah.
deal with it. It's my wife's problem, not really mine.
Yeah, you're married, so it's not a big deal. But I wanted to ask, this stuff you're putting on your head, is it the same formula that Bugs Bunny put on Elmer Fudd's head in the barbershop where it grew flowers out of his dome?
Yeah, I got petunias growing out the back back of my head. So we'll see how it goes. I'll let you know if I get back on the treatment, and if I get some rose petals falling out of my hats.
Good, very good. Something's better than nothing. Okay, the second thing I wanted to talk with you about today, we've discussed this endlessly over the years, because it's been a while since we've seen a lot of good comedy movies coming out in theaters, is just the utter lack of them anymore. I think there's mostly one reason for that, which is there are too many rules now about what's allowed to be funny, and so on and so forth. But I basically think, in my opinion, there was a 35-year period where great comedies were and could be made. Starting in 1974 with Blazing Saddles. I know you and I both love that movie. I'm a big Mel Brooks guy. That is probably the most cancelable comedy ever made. And I can think of a couple others, but that's the first comedy I think of in the 50s and 60s. There may have been some good comedies. I couldn't name a lot. I probably haven't seen very many. There's like The Odd Couple with Walter Matthau and Jack Lemmon in 1968. It's kind of a funny movie, like a clean, funny movie. But I'm starting with 74, damn it, for great comedies. So you had that throughout the 70s. You had, let's see, Bad News Bears with Walter Matthau, came out in 76. Also a very not PC movie. They did a remake in 2005, which was like a little, they put a little polish on it. Not that that movie was very politically correct, but it was a lot more so.
Billy Bob Thornton or somebody.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's I like that one too. It's funny, but like there's this little blonde prick on the team who he's the biggest like racist asshole in 1976, and they kind of cut that part out of his personality in the new one. And then like 78, there was Animal House. National Lampoon's kind of started taking off.
When did you have Airplane? Airplane was in the 70s. It's another fantastic comedy.
Early 80s, I believe. I think
Oh, okay.
because there was this movie called A Futile and Stupid Gesture, which was about Doug Kenny, who was one of the co-founders of the National Lampoon. And 1980, yeah, because Caddyshack came out the same year, and he was really bummed about Caddyshack not doing as well as he'd hoped. And Airplane was the big movie at the time, so they were kind of duking it out. But yeah, 78, Animal House, another very cancelable movie for some of the same reasons and for some other reasons. It's a frat movie. There's a lot of basically those National Lampoon movies. They were raunchy comedies, a lot of unnecessary nudity that you didn't really need, combined with a lot of big laughs. And that turned into, Caddyshack, which was not technically a National Lampoon movie, but was made by a lot of the same people. And you had the vacation movies with Chevy Chase. So getting into the 80s, you had like Chevy Chase, Bill Murray were the big stars, Steve Martin, Eddie Murphy. Coming to America is one of the funniest movies ever made, I think. I think that was 86, 88, somewhere around there. You had a lot of the dorky high school comedies like John Hughes, The Breakfast Club, 16 Candles, Weird Science, that kind of stuff. I love those movies. And then getting
Classics.
into the 90s. Yeah, absolutely. And then getting into the 90s, you had that decade was basically made up by like 3 or 4 just guys who made characters and just like knocked them out of the park. You had Jim Carrey, Dumb and Dumber. We've both seen 89 times. I watched it incessantly when I was like 13, over and over. Which I think is a thing of the past, by the way, is like repeat watching, because now we're in the Netflix generation where you just got so many options all the time. Whereas when we were kids, you just had the handful of VHS tapes you had, and you would watch the ones you liked the most over and over. And then like Ace Ventura and The Mask, things like that. The Farrelly brothers had their heyday in the 90s with There's Something About Mary is one of the funniest movies ever made. It's just a perfect rom-com. Rom-coms mostly have a lot of rom and not enough com, and then this one's like just the funniest thing ever, and less romantic. Obviously, you can't really have both. I feel like you got to have one or the other. And Adam Sandler.
Well, Woogie was a real good Casanova character in that movie. So
Woogie, who broke out in the hives on his forehead, and he was trying to sniff Mary's shoes and all that. Yeah,
love blisters.
I think, if The Bachelor had been out at the time, he probably would have been starring in it. And then throughout the 90s, he had like Sandler kind of created his recurring character of like the kind of soft-hearted tough guy. He's Happy Gilmore. He'll beat the shit out of anybody who crosses him, but then he drops everything he's doing to learn how to play golf and save his grandma's house from the IRS. And then what else in the 90s? You had like American Pie kind of brought back that raunchy high school comedy thing. I feel like they were kind of influenced by that National Lampoon thing. It's like a lot of sex humor, a lot of, there's nudity that you don't really need. And that sort of thing. Can't Hardly Wait was another one in the similar vein. I don't know if you've seen that movie, but it was like another high school party movie. Then you get into the 2000s, you've got, you got Old School, you got Anchorman, like Pineapple Express, so some of those like party movies, stoner movies. I should mention Office Space back in the 90s too. I just have to go back and I can't leave that out. And then let's see, 2009, The Hangover came out. I know you mentioned you're not really a fan of that movie. I like it. I think it's really funny. And I feel like it was the end of an era, because that was the last movie. Basically, I was in the theater, and there's the part where the crew was pulling up to pick up Stu, the bespectacled character, and Bradley Cooper he's on the phone and he says, "Paging Dr. Faggot." And the entire audience of men and women in that theater erupted with laughter. I think there was even a non-binary character next to me who was cutting up over it. That was just an absolute crack up at the time. Unthinkable to use that for laughs anymore. So after that, I feel like everything kind of went off the rails in terms of like, you can't say this, you can't say that, or it's going to be a problem with too many people. And I think that was kind of the death of good comedies.
Yeah, I agree. I 100% agree. I would move that timeline back just a tad. As you mentioned, I'm not a huge fan of The Hangover. The fact that whole thing turned into a series of like 3 or 4 movies or whatever, and the other ones are just absolute garbage.
Yeah, I would have preferred if it was only one, for sure.
But the Bradley Cooper line was great. I actually do remember dying over that in theater too. I think the last movie that I can really recall that is going to or will withstand the test of my time and my scrutiny, the gold standard here, is probably The 40-Year-Old Virgin, which I think came out in like 2005.
Yeah, 04, 05, around there.
Anchorman was around the same time. I liked Anchorman 05. A lot. 2005, yeah, there you go. So that's probably my cutoff date on this end. But you're right. I mean, there's just a lot of jokes that they're afraid to touch these days. Um,
Are you a Tropic Thunder guy?
I'm okay with it. Yeah, it's all right. I didn't particularly find it hilarious, but I mean the fact that Robert Downey Jr. is in blackface, like my
Well, that
God,
was
the thought of touching that now.
2008, and well, I do have to differentiate here. Yes, you could not do what he did now for laughs. Like it would be theaters would be burned down over it. But what he did was not technically like he wasn't Al Jolson. You know,
Yeah, it wasn't
he
a
was
minstrel show, right? He
yeah
wasn't
like
Ted. He wasn't Ted Danson.
yeah. Maybe you might want to put that up on the screen, maybe so people can see that. But Ted Danson apparently did legitimate blackface at some point in his life, and that's on the internet. But anyway, yeah, it wasn't like in the old days. They would actually it was a like a blatantly racist like characterization of black people in their features. You know, it was like they literally put tar on their face, and you could see the outline where the person's white, and then they'd put like big goofy lips on, just crazy exaggerated lips. So that was blackface. And then what Robert Downey Jr. did was like they made him up to look like an actual black man the best they could. Like he actually looked like you probably wouldn't have known. And
Right.
then he's he's doing his accent and everything. But I think everybody at the time found that hilarious, like whether you're black or white or whatever. I don't think anybody was bothered by that. I think it was done great. It was hilarious. The other thing about that movie was like the use of the word retard is not so hip anymore. And the big line in that movie was said by Robert Downey Jr., which was everybody knows you never go full retard. Because he was discussing with Ben Stiller's character, because they're all actors, they're playing actors in the movie, and he played a role where he was retarded, and he was telling him, you can't win an Oscar if you're a full retard. So basically, the point here is all these movies that were like the greatest comedies ever, from you have Blazing Saddles and Animal House and Caddyshack, all whatever it is, they're especially in the 70s and 80s. The point is now there are rules that are supposed to be abided by, and they egregiously broke all those rules. And now no one wants to break the rules anymore. And because of that, in the last 10 years, almost no funny, like how many funny comedies could you name that came out in the last 10 years? I would say there are a few exceptions between like 09 and 2015. But then I think we went off the woke rails in 2015, and now there's been like nothing.
Yeah, I think oh man, if I had to pinpoint it, maybe the female remake of Ghostbusters was when Hollywood officially jumped the shark.
What a horrible concept.
Or Ocean's 8. I know, not a comedy, but again, same thing, same idea. Everything's taboo. I mean, you could have a laundry list of topics that are just untouchable now in comedy, and I cannot remember the last time I saw a good comedy movie. I'm not a huge movie guy anyway, but I do always enjoy, and as you know, I am a comedy flick fan, but I cannot remember the last time I saw anything that was even remotely funny. Most comedy, from what I've gathered these days, is really like more of a girl power movie, where the audience gets together in a theater and everybody laughs at some slapsticky fat chick, in the movie. Rebel Wilson,
Melissa McCarthy have been two of the biggest draws of the last 10 years.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
No one has ever made me laugh less between those two.
Yeah, and then there's some girl power message behind the overall movie as a whole, and boom, comedy blockbuster.
Yeah, the Ghostbusters things gets me the most. Like, first of all, you don't need to remake Ghostbusters in any capacity.
Yeah.
But then you're like, okay, all the cast is going to be women. So in other words, your goal is to make the movie less funny. I don't know what your goal is there. And I'll argue with people about this all the time. I'm open about the fact that generally speaking, men are better comedians, are more funny than women. I don't think there are no exceptions. Like I've met women who are funny. There are some funny actresses, but generally speaking, like how many good female stand-ups can you name versus all the men you can name, or whatever it is?
Yeah, they're almost always exclusively doing jokes, imitating their idea of what male comedy, it talks about. And so it's always like this really, really over the top vulgarity and sexuality behind their jokes, where you don't even see male comedians going there. in that capacity. And it's such a try hard thing with female comedians and female actresses. Comedian actresses are no exception. Kate McKinnon absolutely drives me up nuts. Like, I cannot stand her. Anybody on the SNL cast these days, and not to divert from movies too much. My God, though, absolutely terrible. But you're right.
Her Verizon commercials drive me up the wall.
Yeah, I know.
Just this big stupid face all the time.
Yeah, she does like weird little like dance moves in them, and my blood absolutely boils. Like, I could have an aneurysm watching those commercials.
Yeah, my skin crawls.
And again, she's like an A-list, comedy actress these days. I think her, some of the other SNL females, as you mentioned, Rebel Wilson, Melissa McCarthy, and then Kevin Hart.
Yikes.
Probably the list right now with A-list, comedy actors.
So I do want to say about Kevin Hart. He's extremely popular. The average person typically likes him a lot as a stand-up, as an actor, as a whatever. I haven't enjoyed him since his little cameo, not cameo, but his small part in the 40-Year-Old Virgin. That was the one and only time he's ever made me laugh, is when he's threatening to come back and shoot up the store at Smart Tech. Other than that, like, his stand-ups never made me laugh. I can tell you, I've never heard of all the comedians I've ever met in Seattle, Spokane, wherever, I've never heard one say like, yeah, Kevin Hart's one of my favorites. Like, no one talks about him. I've never heard anyone bring him up as even a remote somebody they like. It's always people. It's usually people most people have never heard of that comedians really like. Yeah,
I can see that. I mean, comedy can be an acquired taste, and generally speaking, like, things that are mainstreamed are usually garbage. Kevin Hart's typically no exception. His first stand-up special, very, very, very first one, is all right. Everything else is terrible.
It's a very frustrating thing about comedy is it's not a total meritocracy like sports or something. It's not all objective. So some of the funniest comedians I've ever known, like that I've met throughout different scenes and stuff, you'll never know their name. They'll never be famous. They'll never make it in any capacity. And then you've got people that just like can't even get a light chuckle out of you, are selling out arenas. So
you got Hannah Gadsby with Netflix specials.
Jesus. Yeah. That's frustrating to even think about. So it's just, that's the way it goes though. Nothing you can do about it.
Nope. All about intersectionality power, girl power, gay power.
Hey, whatever. By the way, I'd like to say, based on our Anchor analytics, 29% of our viewership is female. I want to thank that 29% for sticking with us up to the third episode, and we hope you'll be with us next time. Even though, as a general rule, I think men are funnier than women. I can't apologize for that opinion. I'm an honest guy. I'm an open book.
Yeah, well, right at this timestamp, we're gonna see a nice dip in our YouTube analytics of the two females who did leave and turn this episode off.
I'll check the numbers later. We'll see what happens. I think they're gonna stick with us. I think.
Parting thoughts on movies, comedy movies in general. Too many to list. It's too hard to narrow down. But your 5 most rewatchable comedies all time. Could you name 5?
I definitely could. Yeah. Did you have some in mind already?
Yeah. So number one, I think number 1 for me is Blazing Saddles. 2, Dumb and Dumber. 3, Happy Gilmore. Maybe not the all-time funniest movie, but I don't know.
So rewatchable.
It's like comfort food.
Yeah.
Absolutely love it. Something About Mary, and then The 40-Year-Old Virgin. I think that probably rounds out my top 5. Okay.
So I probably share at least 2 of those. Blazing Saddles and Dumb and Dumber have to be on there. I love Animal House, as I mentioned. I watched that so much in college. I probably watched it 20 times in the 2 years that I was living on campus. Let's see, rewatchable comedies. Man, I've seen The Big Lebowski probably at least 20 times. There's Something About Mary is really up there for me, honestly. What's that, 4, 5? I mean, I could complete the list with one more, but I could also say there are a lot of movies that are not comedies that make me laugh more than almost any other comedy. Like, I think a lot of Scorsese movies, like Goodfellas, are like, there are so many scenes that are hilarious. Like when Robert De Niro's choking the guy with the phone and Henry Hill just starts dying laughing at it. Like that makes me shit myself. Rain Man, absolutely not a comedy, and I laughed the entire way through. Like there are some touching moments, but it is Tom. It's basically just Tom Cruise pissed off his autistic brother for 2 hours, just frustrated with him, and that dynamic is unbeatable. It makes me laugh so much. I've seen the movie multiple times. It never gets old. So yeah, I guess I got those four, and then I'm gonna fill the last spot with a couple of non-comedies.
Good list. Good list. All right. So as you've probably gathered from the first couple of episodes, Justin and I are huge sports fans. One thing that sets us apart maybe from the typical sports fan is that we're also really nerdy about the aesthetics of sports and uniforms in particular. And so there's, been a lot of uniform trends over the years, like we mentioned, I think in the last episode, maybe the teal trend in the 90s and things like the flaming chest piece logo of the Pistons and those teal jerseys and all of that. What are your take on kind of the outlook or the lay of the land of uniforms in today's games?
Well, I think almost no subject fits the hypothesis of our show, which is old things are better than new things, than uniforms. You see so many teams who are they've tried some different things and they just weren't that great. And then they end up just going back to what they wore in the 60s or 70s. And it's like the best possible look for them. I think the best example, they haven't gone back yet, but they have to at some point. And there is hope for the future, because this picture I looked up, it was attached to an article saying the Dolphins may go back to their like 70s uniform. And I'm going to go out on a limb here and say, as you mentioned, we're big enthusiasts on the look, the aesthetic of sports. So this is not something you take with a grain of salt. This means a lot. I think the 1970s era Miami Dolphins uniforms are the best looking uniforms in all of sports. And we're really, when we talk about sports, we're just talking about the major four North American sports: football, basketball, hockey, and baseball. I think that the 70s, the Bob Greasy, Larry Zonka era Dolphins takes the cake. And I think what they've done in the last few years, and maybe it was 6 years ago or something, where they've drastically altered their logo and they've kind of modernized the font and everything. And I think it's just an absolute abortion what they've done to their uniforms. And
they have like an eyeless fish logo. He has no eye. It's just a gaping white space hole. They took the helmet off the dolphin, which is the most egregious thing imaginable.
And its whole expression and face and everything. And to be fair, in the 70s, he doesn't really have an expression. It's very simplified, but he's got the helmet on. He's got the sun in the background. He's jumping out of the water. Now he's just kind of like, I'm floating along, which is what the Dolphins franchise has been doing recently. They haven't really been making any waves. And maybe that has something to do with them fucking up the uniforms horrendously. Yep.
Well, I'm a big Dolphins fan. They wear them a couple times a year, the old school ones, and the shade of teal and everything, from back in the day, it's aqua, was absolutely perfect. They really nailed them in the throwback unis they do wear now. But again, we're only seeing them a couple times a year. They're selling like hotcakes. So I think they probably will come back at some point. And if they do, it kind of exemplifies like the trend across, the major four sports in general, where a lot of these teams are going back to some of those looks. Recently, the Leafs went back to kind of an older looking, logo and everything. For a long time, they had just kind of like the Lego block Leaf logo that was garbage. It just looked like a cookie cutter. The Padres might be the most egregious example, though, of like straying away from their original look. I mean, at least the Dolphins kept their colors generally. The Padres, they went to like a navy blue. They went through a period of orange. They went through a period of tan. And brown and yellow was right there the whole time. They finally really brought back the swinging friar in a major capacity. Thank God.
which is a top 5 all-time sports logo in my mind, the Padres swinging friar. He looks like he's a relative of the Little Caesars mascot. By the way, anyone who's listening to this podcast right now, you'll probably want to check out the YouTube video because there's a lot of visuals we're talking about here. We're going to throw up on the screen so you can see. But yeah, I'm absolutely ecstatic about the fact that the Padres went back to the classic crap and pea color scheme. It works great for them. I mean, their logo is based on like a Dominican friar. So it's just, those colors work perfectly with that. And they've got the pinstripes going now, and it looks great.
Yeah, it's the only unique identifier about them because Lord knows they don't have any World Series titles. But I think the Browns went through a period of just like garishness and nonsense, and then they went back to just a really it's a boring look, but it's kind of withstood the test of time, I guess. And so there's some of those examples throughout sports. At the same time, though, Nike has kind of monopolized some of these leagues. I think they're the primary outfitter for baseball, basketball, and football right now. So three of the 4 major sports.
Adidas for hockey.
Adidas has hockey. And at least in the NBA, Nike's been putting out these alternate uniforms every year, and they're like city edition. And so like teams will wear them periodically throughout the year. So like the Phoenix Suns have a black one that says the Valley, across the chest. It doesn't even say.
I hate that kind of stuff.
Absolute nonsense. This year, I mean, they alternate every year too. These city jerseys do. This year, I think the most egregious ones that I was looking at, there's the Washington Wizards version this year is like, well, for context here, I guess, with these city jerseys that Nike's done this year, they have decided to combine a variety of eras over that franchise's history into one uniform. Yeah. And so like with the Wizards, for instance, they have like kind of a Wes Unseld era inspired uniform with stripes and everything. But they're using the Jordan era Wizards font for the numbers. And so it just looks ridiculous where you have this 90s, early 2000s font for the numbers on the old school 70s stripes. Absolutely pathetic. Go to hell, Nike. Yeah,
I don't like that. I don't like the combination of different elements from different eras either.
Yeah, they've done that across the whole league this year.
Just pick one and stick with it.
And the absolute worst example is the Miami Heat, though. And so what they've done.
Let's throw that up on the screen, by the way, because that is an abomination.
Yeah, we're going to throw all of these up, and you can see it right here. So as you see, you have the letters from all the different eras that spell Miami across the chest. And so like the first M is like the Miami Floridians, and, the old school throwbacks. And then the I is like the current I that they use in their current font. And all the way across as it spells Miami with all the different fonts. And what it ends up really looking like is it looks like a ransom note with magazine cutout letters. Like, I don't understand who was sitting at Nike, in Portland designing this uniform. The son of Sam?
And probably the worst element too of this is if you look at those numbers, you've got the one that's just black, which is the same as the jersey itself with the white outline. And then you've got like this mango colored 3 or whatever it is next to it with the red outline. That you just could not have gone any more wrong with this.
Yeah, I mean and actually if you watch a Heat game, all the numbers are randomized across all of the players. So they all have different numbers and different colors for the numbers from different eras, So like Jimmy Butler will be wearing like the old 90s Heat numbers and so on and so forth. Absolutely dreadful. Anything labeled city edition is where it really goes off the rails. And
when Portland says Rip City, that is the worst. First of all, no one refers to Portland as Rip City, right? Who talks about like Chicago's the Windy City, New York's the Big Apple and stuff. People know those. Philadelphia's Phillies, Detroit's Motown. Nobody in the world calls Portland Rip City, including people who live there, right?
I've never heard it. I've never heard it. I grew up not too far from Portland. Never heard Rip City in my life, but I suddenly see it on Blazer jerseys.
If they are calling it that too, that is a dumb name for a city. I need an explanation.
I don't even know what it means. Yeah,
it's stupid.
Yeah.
Does it have something to do with like specific to the Blazers where like the ball's ripping cord or whatever, like it's going through the net? I really don't know.
I've got nothing. I think the Bucks a couple of years ago with these city editions were the Cream City.
That's awful.
Never knew Milwaukee was known for cream. I always thought it was a beer place.
Yeah, they're known for beer.
Beer and Harley Davidson. Those are the only two things I know about Milwaukee. I'd like to go.
And Jeffrey Dahmer.
Jeffrey Dahmer,
They
absolutely.
should do a Jeffrey Dahmer edition uniform with blood splattered all over it. One thing I think is worth mentioning. I was talking last week about simplicity being the best recipe for most things, whether it's music or it definitely applies to uniforms here. Because I think every attempt at like making something different is usually garbage. The one notable exception for me is the Toronto Raptors 90s uniforms, because they greatly divert from what a classic simple uniform looks like. And they knocked that one out of the park. And now they've actually gone to a more simple uniform. And we'll throw this one up on the screen, but it's got the arrow pointing up, and it's like they ditched purple, they ditched the dinosaur logo. They completely undid everything that was perfect about that franchise. And now they're just some bland looking, they got the stupid sponsor Sun Life or whatever on it, like everybody else now. And they're just one of 4 teams in the league that's red and black, and instead of being purple and red, which is what they were. Yeah. Which sounds bizarre, but it worked so well for them.
It was, yeah, that's actually one of my all-time favorite uniforms. I have a pair of Mitchell and Ness 90s Toronto Raptors shorts that I wear around the house.
They were probably $80 and well worth it.
100. Don't tell my wife the price. She absolutely despises those. She will bury those at the bottom of the hamper so I don't find them and clean them. I don't even wear them in the public. She can't stand me wearing them in the kitchen.
That sounds about right. I don't know if we've ever discussed this, but women are not terribly attracted to men wearing sports uniforms.
Yeah. It's not our look wearing another man's name on our back, but there's a lot of good jerseys out there, so she can get over it, and she can get over my Raptors shorts. But yeah, they did. They went to this thing where I guess they just looked at the Chicago Bulls and said, let's just be a generic version of these guys.
Mm-hmm. And another thing that proves to you that classic vintage uniforms are pretty much always the best, and the future is not the place to look for good uniforms, is just look at the Mariners, and really the whole major leagues. They did this, but the Mariners were god awful. They've had turn ahead the clock, I think they call it, night, which they've done numerous times. And we'll throw that up on the screen right now. You just got this awful sleeveless. For some reason, the franchise's colors have changed. They're like maroon and black when they're, instead of being teal and blue. And you got the giant logo there. It's just an absolute diarrhea mess. They should have been embarrassed and the first time they did it and never done it again, but it's been repeated over the years. So look to the past for a good uniform. 1970s Dolphins are the gold standard, and do not look to the future. And the Mariners can show you why. Also, a lot of teams have kind of kept the same formula for their whole existence, for like 60, 70 years. And it's like like I'd say the Chicago Blackhawks are like the perfect example of like, if it's not broke, don't fix it. Basically, any original 6 franchise has kept close to the same formula their whole existence. So we'll put up a picture here, Stan Mikita. This is in like 50s, 60s, whenever it is. And then now, you got the beautiful red sweater. You got the logo that's probably going to be canceled in the next few years, and it'll infuriate me. The team's name will change. And then just, look at this picture of Patrick Kane here in the modern era. Virtually no difference. Still looks great. And I'm a guy, I hate change for the sake of change. If something needs change, then change it. But this is not a uniform. This should be their eternal uniform. It should be proclaimed by the mayor of Chicago, Lori Lightfoot. That name, logo, and sweater should never change for all of time. But unfortunately, we know that's not the case.
Yeah, I'm going to actually submit one more, timeless logo or look, but you're wearing a Milwaukee Bucks shirt right now. And I am going to advocate that Cream City adopts that as their logo on their city flag. The Bucks go back to it full time. They went to that Dolphins look too, where I think the eyes are just like negative white space, and so Awful. They don't really have eyes. That logo of the Bucks spinning the ball, untouchable. Go back to it now, damn it.
The colors, the uniform, and the logo, they all need to go back to 1971 and just never leave. And And by the way, that Bucks logo you're just talking about, they kind of tried to make it look tough, and it doesn't work. And I know you and I have talked about this before, but we have kind of an affinity for some reason I can't explain for pussy, kind of wimpy looking logos, in which this deer absolutely is one. He couldn't look any less intimidating, and it's great. I would also throw in like the Baltimore Orioles old bird as an example. Even the swinging friar, stuff like that. These are not, I just don't like logos that look like they're trying too hard to be tough. They look pathetic.
Yeah. And with the Bucks, like trying to look tough too. Their 90s logo was like just a hyper realistic deer that was absolutely, he was absolutely yoked. He looked way tougher than what they have now anyway. His muscles are popping out of it, his clavicles, for crying out loud.
I like that one better than the current one, because the current one has
at least it's something.
It's like this evil eye. I don't know. It looks more fake, but it's just, I don't. It's got like this trying too hard element to it, whereas the other one, it's like, it's got the physique, I guess, but it looks more like a real deer, and it doesn't look like it's trying too hard.
Yeah, you never want to go full retard.
Okay, given that it's been well established this week that there are no funny movies being made anymore, and sports uniforms are garbage, there really isn't much left to live for. And so we're gonna, keep the weekly segment going with Apocalypse Now, and we're gonna ask the Lord to smite the earth. And what we're about to show you next is more reason than anything else we've discussed today why we're deserving of it. Let's go ahead and roll all those, and we're gonna find it in the usual bowels of hell of TikTok where we have so far. So enjoy.
Giving no hope, I ain't Romeo and I'll hold. Making a party, chocolate Barbie waiting on me for yo. Nah, we ain't giving no hope, I ain't Romeo and I'll hold. Making a party, chocolate Barbie waiting on me for yo. Nah, we ain't giving no hope, I ain't Romeo and I'll hold. Making a party, chocolate Barbie waiting on me for yo. Nah, we ain't giving no hope, I ain't Romeo and I'll hold. Making a party, chocolate Barbie waiting on me for yo.
I need bleach for my eyeballs after those. What is your take? I've got nothing.
I'm trying to figure out which one infuriates me the most. I'm gonna say the grandma one at the beginning, with the rhythm is horrible, and she makes the joke about white people having no rhythm. As awful as it is, I think it takes a backseat to the rest in the bus ride to hell. So,
yeah, but don't loop your grandma into this. Like deep down, she probably knows like this is absolutely ridiculous. This is what these dumb young kids do. Like stick with your instincts, grandma. Don't get on TikTok. You look ridiculous.
At the same time, maybe she should be more ashamed than anybody. It's like, you should know better. You didn't grow up in this dipshit generation. When she loves white guys. First of all, this formula for a video. What is this? Another one bites the dust instrumental sped up with this crappy British rapper over it. It's just garbage. And then what are we supposed to get out of you bobbing your head from the front view and then turning it to show just some other dipshit doing the same thing, and now we're getting it from the side view? Is this funny? Is this cool? Is this entertaining in any capacity? What are we supposed to get out of this?
I have no idea, but it goes back to like what we've been saying, where everybody this trended somehow. How this went viral, I have no idea. And everybody just thought, yeah, this is pretty cool. I'm going to do this and do my own variation of it, including using it to brag about having segs.
Segs, yeah, that's
segs.
right.
Segs and smush.
Segs and smushing. Who do you hate more? The blue-haired girl whose idea it was to make that video, or the douchebag boyfriend driving the car who went along with it?
Being the accomplice is bad enough, but she's bragging about leaving Thanksgiving dinner early to go smash. You're not cool. Go back to grandma's and spend some quality time with your family. You might get some good wisdom imparted upon you. Like, for instance, the fact that Kansas City Royal Blue is not a good look for your hair. Go back, spend that quality time with your family, and worry about smushing later. And by the way, you better be married.
Yeah, bragging about fornication. What are you doing?
It's the same thing with the lesbian couple too. The one where what is she wearing? She looks like a music video extra for Tears for Fears.
Yeah, that suit or whatever felt a little Marilyn Manson-y to me.
I got a total 80s vibe from it, but absolutely ridiculous.
Well, so here's something we've been neglecting to do the last couple of weeks in the Apocalypse Now segment. We've kind of just been showing this thing and, prefacing it by saying the earth needs to be destroyed, but we haven't actually taken the time to beckon the Lord to do as much. So if you could take a moment, close your eyes and bow your head, Jake, I'll lead us in prayer. Lord, we know that everything that exists is here because you made it, and you can take it away at any time. You said you would never flood the earth again, but it is still at your command to decimate us in any way you choose. So if it be your will, given these TikTok videos and everything we've discussed today, please just feel free to just pick up the earth and shake it like an Etch-a-Sketch and start from scratch. We will completely understand. Thank you, Lord. Amen. All right. Thanks everybody for tuning into Crappy Days this week. We may or may not be back next week. I'm going to be in Tampa, hanging with Jake for a few days. So we might just record one there, or we might take a break and get back to it next week, but I'll keep you updated on Instagram. Follow me at Just Snide, and we will, you'll have all the updates on the show. You'll know when to tune in and when to expect us. So thank you for being here and have a good one.
I piss, tell him I'm Harlem, Harlem only, Kennet and baby, star in the hood, we glow. AD do snow and Biscuit do green like Grove. Sparta, we push things and smoke. Love, nah, we ain't giving no hold. I ain't Romeo and I'll hold. Making a party, chocolate Barbie, waiting on me for a yo. In the back is Joe, I'm riding shotgun, the driver's unknown. 2 wheels, 2 men, 1 scan compact, let's see who gets home. Ski, see man run like I ain't involved. My main bitch is my flick, my side bitch is my stick. SA with that black blade, you hear 1 flick and get dipped. Blood drip off the dip, it's a splash thing when we grip. It's hard a bitch, Spartans looking all Harlem-ish.